to my heart's content. Without changing her expression, Kate hurled sharp words at me. I felt indignation towards Kate, who was pressuring me to leave quickly as I lived with my parents. However, Kate would later find herself in an unexpected predicament as a result of her actions. My name is Gina. I'm 36 years old. Almost all my friends have families, and I'm the only one who's still single. I consider marriage if possible, but I'm satisfied with my fulfilling daily life, so I don't see much value in it. I work as a web designer, a job I can do from home. I live with my parents, but for certain reasons, my room is more spacious than theirs. It's to display my collection of glass crafts, a hobby of mine. I've collected glass crafts from around the world and keep them in special display cases in my room. They vary in size and have unique characteristics depending on the country of production. I'm especially fond of a Nordic-made glass bird, whose wing colors change when reflected in the light. These items are all unique or have become more expensive due to importation. I enjoy my single life, and the amount I've spent on this collection is immeasurable. My job as a web designer is challenging, creating designs from scratch to meet client demands. I've worked hard in this job to obtain the glass craft items I'm attached to. My parents have never dismissed this hobby of mine. Instead, they've supported me kindly. My aging parents say having Gina by our side is enough, welcoming my stay at the family home. I have an older brother who's 3 years my senior. He married a few years ago and moved out, but his apartment with his wife, Kate, isn't far from here. Therefore, Kate and my brother frequently visit our parents' home. Kate has always been calm and quiet since marrying, and I never doubted she must be a good person since my brother chose her. But later, as she began to visit more often, I started to harbor suspicions about her behavior. When I was watching TV in the living room, Kate visited and whispered, "You have the time and leisure to watch TV without working." At first, I doubted my ears, but the next time I met her, I realized it was not a misunderstanding. When Kate came to the house and wanted to use the bathroom, I noticed there was no toilet paper and informed her, to which she replied, "You should at least manage basic things like that properly." It wasn't a big issue, but such small sarcasms can accumulate into a larger problem. It seemed Kate was not only sarcastic towards me but also towards my parents. After Kate's visits, it was usual for my parents to be noticeably angry. Yet, Kate herself didn't seem to have the slightest inkling that my parents disliked her, and she continued to visit our house regularly and relax. My parents, tired of her frequent visits, seemed to have told my brother to reduce the frequency of her visits. It happened the day after. On a day when both my parents happened to be out, I was working from home in the living room. When the doorbell rang unexpectedly, I checked the front door camera, hoping for a delivery, but to my surprise, it was Kate standing there alone. "Kate, what's wrong?" I asked through the intercom. She answered, "Your in-laws told me to wait inside the house." I found this puzzling since my parents hadn't mentioned anything of the sort to me, though the thought that it might be true briefly crossed my mind. With a sense of unease, I decided to open the front door. Kate walked in, grumbling, "You should open the door quicker. How long do you expect me to wait outside?" And before I could stop her, she proceeded to the back of the house and swiftly entered the room next to the living room. "Kate, what are you doing?" I hurried after her. Seeing my surprised face, Kate looked puzzled. "What am I doing?" "I'm just looking at something unusual," she replied confidently. Despite my unease, I challenged her, "But isn't it rude to enter someone's room without permission?" Kate responded without changing her expression. "Your mother-in-law said, 'Come over anytime.'" I felt like we were having a completely incomprehensible conversation. I remember when Kate first joined the family. My parents welcomed her and doted on her as the new bride, and my mother casually said, "Come over anytime." But could it be that she wasn't aware of what my parents had conveyed to my brother just yesterday? I asked Kate out of curiosity, "Didn't you hear anything from my brother yesterday?" "Yes, he told me, 'Don't come over too much because it bothers your in-laws.'" "But he wouldn't say that, right?" she replied nonchalantly. I was at a loss for words at her response. Despite the prior notice from my brother, Kate had come to our house today. As we talked, it became clear that her claim about my parents asking her to wait inside was also false. If I didn't say that, you wouldn't open the door, would you? She stated bluntly, and I let out a big sigh. Kate, please don't visit so frequently from now on. I'll explain it clearly to my brother, I said while pushing her curious gaze towards the entrance. She kept asking, why? What's the reason? But I didn't have the energy to explain. After sending Kate outside, I said, I have other things to do today, so please go back home and close the door. The intercom continued to ring for a while, and there were knocks on the door, but they eventually stopped when I ignored them. After ensuring that Kate had left, I sighed deeply again. It was an unprecedentedly unpleasant event. Since it was my room that was invaded, I checked to make sure nothing had been tampered with before I could finally return to my work. When my parents and brother came home, I reported the day's incident, and my brother turned pale and apologized, while my parents couldn't hide their angry expressions. Perhaps scolded by my brother, Kate did not visit the house for a month. It was on a day when I finally felt relieved. My parents were out, and I was engrossed in my work. When I took a break after finishing a task, feeling tired, I headed to the kitchen to prepare some iced tea and snacks. Suddenly, I felt someone's presence behind me. I turned around and, unbelievably, Kate was there. Kate, I called out, and she grimaced for a moment before approaching me. Here you are again, Gina, she said. The words seemed to carry a nuance of it would have been better if you weren't here. However, there was something I needed to ask Kate. Kate, how were you able to come in here? I demanded to know. I was sure I had locked the front door properly. I had no recollection of the doorbell ringing, nor should the door have been left unlocked. Kate, showing me a brand new key in her hand, said, I made a copy of it. I borrowed one from your mother-in-law before. You made a copy on your own. I couldn't hide my surprise. The fact that she had duplicated the key after borrowing it from my mother meant that she could have used it to enter the house multiple times before. As I reacted, Kate narrowed her eyes and asked, putting that aside, Gina, when will you leave this house? I didn't grasp her intent and threw the question back at her. What do you mean by leaving this house? Unemployed people like you who have been relying on their parents' house for so long shouldn't stay here forever. Kate stated firmly. Unemployed? I asked again. I couldn't make sense of Kate's words and struggled to understand. Tilting her head as if puzzled, Kate continued to explain. I want to live here. So, it's necessary for Gina, who keeps lingering at her parents' house, to leave. Do you mean to live here with the consent of my parents? I counted. I had never heard such a thing from my parents. Thinking about it, it was clear that my parents would not agree to live with her. My expression must have turned stern. I don't need permission. I've decided this. If Gina leaves, I can be happy in this house. Kate declared her will. How selfish could she be? I was astonished that she was so convinced she was not wrong, but her intent to drive me out and live in the house was clear. Without the energy to protest, I muttered quietly, I understand your thoughts, Kate. Then, I will leave this house. Gina, I'm grateful, Kate said. Kate's face suddenly lit up and she clapped her hands with joy. At her reaction, like a child who got a new toy, all I could do was sigh. Then, since there are some procedures to take care of, can you leave for today? I asked. Yes, I'll do that. Your help, Gina, Kate responded, starting to walk towards the exit with a completely different demeanor than when she arrived. Her retreating figure clearly radiated joy. After watching her leave, I immediately decided to call my family to inform them of the situation. 2 months had passed since then. 2 days after I completed all the procedures and told Kate, it's all done, please go ahead. My cell phone rang with a call from her. Pressing the call button to answer, Hey, Gina, what is the meaning of this? Kate exclaimed in a high voice. While grimacing at her irritating voice, I replied, What's the matter, Kate? This is no joke. Your in-law's house is on the market. What's going on? She exclaimed loudly. The sound was so loud that it almost cracked a phone. Indeed, what she was saying was true. The house where our family had lived was now for sale. It had been in my name originally, so I had put it up for sale when I decided to move out. Kate seems to misunderstand that I'm not working, but in reality, I run a web design company and make about $1 million a year. If you want to live in a house, you can buy that one and then you can live there, I suggested. I don't have that kind of money. Kate continued. Yesterday, your brother brought up divorce. Gina, did you do something? She accused. I'm as surprised by my brother's decision as you are, but it seems he was quite tired of you. I replied. At that moment, I heard the sound of something falling on the other end of the phone. My decision to sell the house coincided with my brother's proposition of divorce to Kate. Our parents had also been perplexed by her behavior for some time and seemed fed up with her uncooperative attitude. And they fully support the divorce decision. This divorce is unacceptable. I just want to continue living in the house. Kate insisted. From now on, please talk to my brother and his representative. I'm no longer involved with that house, I informed her calmly. Kate continued to raise her voice. I ended the conversation and hung up the phone immediately. Right before I cut the call, she was shouting something, but I pretended not to hear. Later, my brother's divorce from Kate was finalized successfully. She had been a housewife, living a life of luxury. But now, after this incident, her life has changed dramatically. She had to start earning her own living. It seemed to be a classic case of reaping what one sows. She is apparently starting a new life in a modest apartment nearby. As for our family, we decided to purchase a room in a high-rise condominium, a larger space than our previous home. My father and mother are now free from the fear of Kate's unexpected visits and are spending their days happily. I am also working hard, enjoying my hobby of collecting glass crafts.